Now to the lesson I know you've been really anxious to get to, and I know you're excited about: pricing. We're going to talk about how to price your website maintenance plan so that it works for you, for your business from a profitability standpoint, and very importantly, for your perfect clients, your ideal customers. You want to make sure your price points lie within a budget that's good for them as well. So I got a lot of thoughts on pricing. And what's interesting is, as a solopreneur and a freelancer, I saw my pricing go from that range when I had a very low hourly rate to when I was scaling a team. And I've been fortunate now to oversee my agency and see what we're doing at a higher price point. And I've seen a lot of students all over the world with different price ranges. I'm going to help you decide what's best for you. Before we dive in, and one thing I wanted to mention before we dive in, I'm going to actually show you a few proven examples of price points that will help you determine which is best for you. I also have some really, really important thoughts on pricing that we're going to end off with. So make sure you hang around to the end of this lesson. I've got a few really important things that I certainly wish somebody would have showed me or told me about before I got my plan going. But speaking of getting my plan going, I wanted to start with sharing a story, because when it comes to price points, it can vary depending on the value you bring and what works with your clients. I started my plan at $75 a month, which just included maintenance and pretty much most of the things that you saw so far in the plan. That did not include hosting. What I did do was hosting for $95 a month with maintenance. Now, what was interesting is, a few months in, none of my hosting plans clients had a problem, but I had around over 20 clients, and a handful of people kept on questioning the maintenance plan and wondering if it was worth it at the price point of $75 a month. I did not start my plan with tiers, so it was just $75 a month. This was also before I started doing e-commerce and larger sites. And what I decided to do, and I'm not going to recommend that you do this necessarily, but I dropped my maintenance plan cost to $59 a month. And with over 20 clients, I told all of them, hey, just letting you know, nothing's going to change. You still get the same value. I'm actually just going to drop your rate. I'm going to take you down to $59 a month because we're reevaluating our pricing, and you're now paying $16 less a month than you were. Now, again, I don't recommend you necessarily do that, but all of the clients I did that with were flabbergasted, and they could not believe that I charged them less than I already had billed them for previously. And I don't think any of them ever left our plan. So it was kind of a weird way to nail down some clients for life. But I say that to say your pricing will likely evolve. So just remember, when you start your plan and your pricing, this is phase one. You can always change it and scale up and change some things moving forward. But that's kind of what I did initially. It was kind of an interesting case study. And again, don't recommend that you necessarily do that, but it did kind of work for me. And it just goes to show you can always change your rates and pricing. Now, a few important notes before we dive in. Number one, factoring and figuring out your perfect price point for your plan is going to depend on, well, quite a few things, but it's going to depend on largely your hourly rate. For example, if you are at a $35 hourly rate and your monthly plan is $50 a month, that's very different than if your hourly rate is $125 a month and then you're charging $50 a month for your maintenance plus an hour of support, because that's not going to even out. If you're at $125 a month, for example, or 125 hourly rate, you don't want to be charging $50 a month and include that hour, because it's just too drastic. So your hourly rate is going to be a factor in with your pricing. A couple other factors that are going to be included that are going to help you determine where your price should be are the tools and expenses that you have and you're subscribed to. So if you're using Sucuri for extra protection, if you're using Termageddon for the privacy policies, if you're using premium add-ons for your plan, all of those are going to factor in. You want to make sure you're profitable. And then lastly, if it's just you or if you have a team, if you're scaling and if you have people that you're actually paying to help you maintain your plan, you'll likely be at a bit of a higher price point. So just remember, all of those things are going to factor in. This is why your plan is likely going to evolve as your business evolves. Now, when your pricing changes, number two here, I do recommend that you grandfather in your old clients to the new plans at the same price point, unless things are drastically different. Like if your plan is at $50 a month, but then your plan is now changing to $100 a month, that's a pretty big price jump. I would still try to grandfather in as many people as you can, unless it's just not profitable, in which case, what I would do is offer all of your existing clients a discount. Just remember, you don't want to be a cable company. You don't want to jack up rates for your existing clients and then give your best deals to new clients. You want to give your best deals to your existing clients. Same principle applies here. offer them a discount, or ideally grandfather them at the old rate. Because there's nothing worse than when prices change and there's no other value, right? Like Netflix, when they tell you, oh, by the way, it's like $2 more a month now. It's like, oh, there's nothing extra. It's just more. So you want to try to avoid that. You just want to make sure you stay profitable as well. So big point there, because you will go through eventual price changes. Now, on the note of pricing, like I mentioned a little bit ago, I went from 75 to 59. There's kind of a difference between what numbers you end off prices on. There's no right or wrong on this, but 5s, 7s, and 9s are most common. So my plan was at 75 when I started. I went down to 59. A lot of plans end in 7s, like 97. Now, I've got a rule of thumb on pricing. You can take it or leave it. My rule of thumb that seems to have worked pretty well is a one-time service or a one-time product ends in 7. Like my courses, all my courses end in 7. However, a subscription product ends in 9. The psychology behind that, I'm not quite sure. I'm working that out myself, but there's a lot of psychology behind why prices end in 7s or 9s. For some reason, I like the subscription model ending in a 9. So that's my recommendation. That's what we're going to go through in this course. That's what I would recommend to you as well. Now, when it comes to multiple sites, definitely offer a breakdown for multiple sites for one client. For example, I had a lot of clients who built more websites with me, or I built more websites for them. And then I offered to take multiple sites on our plan. How you want to do this is totally up to you. But what I would do is often offer like a 20 to 30% discount for additional sites. So if you're charging $100 a month on average, so we'll keep it at 99, but we'll say 100 for the sake of math. And then you get 2 websites from one client. I would take maybe 30% off or 20% off and drop it down to like 150 for 2 sites. So make sure you offer some sort of incentive for multiple websites on your plan. And then lastly, before we dive into these proven examples, always offer monthly and annual plans. And with your annual plans, we'll look at the pricing on those. You definitely want to give an incentive for somebody to sign up annual to where they have more savings. So you ideally want to try to lock clients in for an annual plan as much as you can and give them a really good discount, because there's nothing better than when somebody signs up for a full year for you. It's stable income, helps the books, and it'll help reduce churn because they're with you for a year. And then as long as they have a great experience, they'll likely not churn moving forward. Now let's take you into some of these proven examples, starting with proven example number 1, which is based off of the titles that we just covered, Standard, Premium, and Elite. These are kind of my personal favorite, although again, totally up to you with which ones you want to do. I should say too, for the remaining lessons in the course, we're going to be really switching up the title of the plan to, we're not going to just call it maintenance plan. I might call it care plan. I might call it support plan, might call it security and maintenance. You'll hear a lot of different terms, but either way, Standard, Premium, and Elite. What is most common in this case, for example, 1 is $49 a month or $4.99 a year. And again, if we ran the math on that, let me go off screen. Let me get my little calculator out here. 49 times 12 is 588. So by getting the plan for an annual price of $4.99, they're essentially almost getting 2 months free. And you can even write that in your sales pages. You could say, get this plan for 2 months free with our annual plan. And then Premium would be $99 a month, which is what we want to get people to. And Elite is going to be $199. Now, the biggie here in example 1, this is an example with no hour per month of retainer time in the Standard plan. So again, this is where you're welcome to take this or leave it as far as if you want to include monthly time in all your plans, or in this example, and a lot of examples you'll see in the next lesson with some real case studies and real examples of sites, you'll see a lot of people do this, where they start at $49 with no hourly time, because there are a lot of cases where you'll have clients that have a site that is rarely going to be updated, and they may not need you every month. So it's kind of nice to have an option for them. This is what I would recommend, especially if you're starting out. And just remember, if you're just starting out, these price points might be fine for you and your clients, but as your hourly rate grows, as your business grows, you may need to up it a little bit, which brings us perfectly to example number 2, which is very similar. Same names here. It's just the pricing is different. $99 per month or $99 a year, $149 or $299. You could even switch this up a little bit if you wanted to. Now, the difference here is that your Standard plan is going to include an hour. Likely, the difference between these are going to be maybe 1 hour here per month that's covered, maybe 2 hours here, and then maybe 3 or 4 hours here if it's a like large e-commerce type project. So those are the primary examples that I've seen at price points that are kind of mid-range. So these aren't really low maintenance plan costs, but they're also not really high either. They're kind of a good mix between something that's very reasonable for clients, especially if it's $500 a year. A business, if they don't have $500 a year to invest in their website and keep it, safe and protected, may not be the best client. We'll also talk about having a fallback plan to be able to capture people who maybe don't want to go this route. But either way, you want to have plans that are, again, going to work for you, your business, and your clients. Now, example 3 here is a little bit of a mix of what I mentioned where my plan started in the beginning and then where plans are at now, which is just to have 2. So you could have essentially a plan that is $99 a month and then a plan that is $199 for more advanced sites. And then if they neglect to move forward, then you can have a fallback plan, and I'll explain a little more details on your fallback plan because we've already talked about what you can include. But to price that, in this case, I would make my fallback plan more like $49 a month. Now, if you were to have this example and somebody neglects all these, you could say, listen, let's at least back up the site, do the maintenance and secure, or not even security at this point, but you could make that like $29 a month or $39 a month. That way, at least they're with you, or at least doing hosting. Same thing here. My fallback plan in this case would probably be the $49 a month or $39 a month as a fallback plan. But again, you don't want to kind of showcase those. I'll tell you how and when to talk about your fallback plan and how to price those. But that would be my recommendation example. So let's actually look at these practically, because if we go over to this little, well, it was a screenshot that I showed you a little bit ago without the pricing, but this is an actual look at the landing page, the kind of sales page template that I have set up for you as an example. And you can see here, these price points, once they're matched up with everything that's included, it looks awesome. It looks complete. It looks, very professional. And these will, again, talk about what's included. And then the price points really accentuate what is included. And then the big deal, the big thing to remember, guys, is when you have these different examples and these different tiers, let's stick on this example. You got to show what is included in each one of these, because you need to make sure the difference is very well known. Your clients need to understand the difference between $49, $99, and $199, which is exactly why in this example that I have for you that is available on the landing page, that's exactly what we have here. $49 a month or $499 a year, $99 a month or $99.90 a year, blah, blah, blah. And then it shows what's included. And then I would definitely accentuate what is included and what's not with something like this, with check marks or with lines that cross out what's not involved. In this plan right here, the standard plan, it's up to you whether you would want to include privacy policy with Termageddon. You could potentially cut that out, even though it should be standard in most sites. And when it comes to pricing, always have a featured or a most popular option, just to showcase that this is the one that you want ideally. But just remember, some clients may not even qualify for these lower tiers. If you have an e-commerce site that's a huge site with 100 products, they're going elite. And you just need to tell your client, we have these different options, but for your website, you have to go elite. We're not going to be able to maintain the site at this rate. So if they ever ask that, that's what I always said. And they're very understanding of that as well. They should be, at least. So I just wanted to show you that's kind of the look of these plans practically with what that would look like. And again, if you're going to go with this route, just bump up the pricing and change what is included in your plans accordingly. Now, we talked about the fallback plan a little bit. One thing I would do is I would not have your fallback plan on here. I would share your fallback plan a little bit later, and we'll talk about that shortly. But I know I've been asked before, like, where is your fallback plan on here? Hold tight. I'm going to talk about that shortly, but that's a look at the pricing, what's involved. And again, just a good example of how to frame yours to look professional and make it very clear what's in there. Now, for those of you who use Divi, this is a part of the sales page template that I have for you, which is a Divi layout. If you don't use Divi, don't worry. You'll still be able to look at this page live, and I'll have all the text for you so you can use it on in your theme of choice. Now, some final thoughts on pricing as you think about what price point is going to work for you. First off, one thing you can do is check out your competition. Look at other competitive freelancers and web design agency owners in your area, if you are in a local market where you have a lot of local clients, and see what they're pricing, see what their price points are. because you can get an idea of what's common. This will also help you when clients are wondering, why they should sign up with your plan. You could potentially tell them our plan is kind of in the middle, but there's higher options here. Like look at some of these competitor options. So that's always an option you can do there, is kind of check out your competition to help you get the right price point for you and your clients. Another biggie, that fallback plan. But here's the kicker. You don't want to put your fallback plan here, like I mentioned. You want to do it personally, and you don't want to have a plan B type page. This is what I had in place. I had a fallback page, a plan B page. It didn't say fallback plan, but it said basic maintenance plan. And I would send clients that to sign up. What I didn't realize though, is that really shows the client that, hey, they already knew a lot of people were going to say no. So what I would do is to make your clients feel special, tell them, listen, if you're not going to sign up for hosting or maintenance, we want to make sure your investment is protected and our work is protected and optimized. Let us at least maintain the site, do the backups, and then just send that to them in an email. And then you can have a link to your plan where they can sign up through your invoicing software or whatever you'd like to do, but have that in there as kind of a personal email. If you've got to put some sort of page on your website for payment, that's fine, but do it personally. And again, don't put it on here, because what's going to happen is if you put your basic like fallback plan on here, a lot of people who are going to say, I don't want any of that, but yeah, I'll do that. They're going to go for the cheaper plan. Same thing here too. I did want to mention this, guys, as kind of an aside. When you have different pricing tiers, you've got to really separate the pricing enough to where they're not too similar. For example, if this was $79 and this is $99, guess how many clients are going to go for the $79? Like 90%, because they're so close in price point and price range that most people are going to choose the cheaper option. So by having tiers, you definitely need to have the pricing different enough to where they're in those different pricing buckets. Like I mentioned with 59 versus 75, that ended up being definitely different pricing buckets psychologically for a lot of clients. And then you want to make sure it's very clear what's in those and why they're different. So just a little bit of a side note there. Next up, if a client does not host with you, not the end of the world. And what I would do is just offer the same plan, but just drop probably about 10% off the price. So if they just cannot get out of their hosting because maybe and this is common, maybe it's a company that has a dedicated server or a company they've worked with for years and an IT guy or something. Maybe they just can't get out of their hosting. Offer your maintenance and everything it's included, but just drop it by 10%. So this might be $89 per month instead of $100. When it comes to that though, one thing I would say is all is not lost. And in fact, some clients may host with you. In that case, in this point, if you are going, and actually before we get onto that, if you are going to host a client that is not hosted with, or I'm sorry, if you are going to offer your maintenance plan with a client that is not on your hosting, one thing I would do is do a setup fee. And my recommendation would just be to do it at your hourly rate, because it's really hard to figure out how to onboard a site that you either didn't design or that you're not a hosting platform that you're not familiar with. And I have got a lesson later on in the course that will really dive into this in detail, but I would have a setup fee if you are going to do maintenance on a site that has different hosting, because it's likely going to be, there's going to be tools that you're not familiar with, or you need to check some things. And what you could do is you could just tell your client, might be 1 to 3 hours or something, and just bill hourly for that if a client is not on your hosting. However, what I started to get into, because I'm so excited about this point, is that if your client already has hosting, all is not lost. Remember this, and this is something that I wish somebody would have told me this years ago when I started my plan. Buy them out. So for example, if your client is on GoDaddy hosting and they've got maybe 2 years left in their contract and it's like $120 or something, just buy them out. It's so worthwhile getting that client onto your hosting and maintenance plan. It's so worth $120 to buy them out, and just let them know, listen, you're going to have all sorts of issues by staying with that terrible hosting. It's going to be a nightmare. Why don't we do this? You sign up for our plan. I will give you a $120 discount off of the plan. So you'll sign up and you'll basically get maybe 2 or 3 months free, depending on the plan. Buy them out. I'm telling you, it's so worth it. I wish somebody would have told me that early on, because I neglected to do that. And I had clients that were on Bluehost or GoDaddy or Bad Hosting that were like, well, I've already got a year or two with this other host. And I was like, okay, I'll do the maintenance and we'll just host it there. ended up being a nightmare because I couldn't control the hosting, bad performance, really slow, all sorts of issues. Would have been so worthwhile if I had just paid $100 or so to buy them out, take that off the maintenance plan. The most important thing here, guys, is that you get people on your hosting and maintenance. That is the name of the game. That is the most important thing. So again, I hope this look at these price structures have helped you identify your perfect pricing. My challenge for you now is to look at these proven examples, think about what works for you from a profitability perspective, depending on where your hourly rate is, what your expenses look like, and get it going. Launch it. See if it works with your clients. Again, remember, you can always adjust and evolve your plans. You will do that anyway. And again, when you set up your pricing, make sure it's very clear what is involved with these plans and where the value is for each one of these price points. Can't wait to hear how this one helps you out, because I certainly wish I would have had somebody help me figure out my pricing before making all the mistakes I made early on. So those are some examples. Now, let's actually take a look at some real world examples of maintenance plan pages from a lot of my students and colleagues who are selling maintenance plans, and you'll get to see pricing, layouts, structures, and more. Let's dive in.